Okay, my outstanding friends, this is a very serious discussion. They're talking about possibility of 100,000 new cancers created by CAT scans because of the radiation. The CAT scan has what they call ionizing radiation, and it damages DNA. They don't realize, or they apparently don't realize, your DNA repairs itself. But it relies on a system of enzymes. And very critical, these enzymes are there to repair this DNA. So even though you're being damaged, the DNA should be able to fix itself. But if you don't have the enzymes, it's not going to fix itself. Where do the enzymes come from? Literally from bacteria. Bacteria are the factories that create enzymes. If you, for some reason, whatever the reason is, have taken antibiotics perhaps, because that kills bacteria that's in your body, or you have ingested something that is a bactericide or a herbicide, that can damage your bacteria and kill it. If you don't have the bacteria, you're not going to get the enzymes. The enzymes are the key to repairing your DNA. The radiation breaks the DNA. Yes, I'm not disagreeing with that. But the enzymes come right away and they fix it right back up. Okay, here it is right here. I asked, can DNA repair itself? And it says, yes, DNA has a built-in repair mechanism. Self-repair. But rather, it's a system of complex processes involving enzymes that fix the damage. This is how fast enzymes work. There's something called TIL, tryptophanase. It's an enzyme, and it works with tryptophan, which is one of the most important things in your body for energy. And the bacterial enzyme catalyzes a reversible hydrolytic cleavage of L-tryptophan. And anyway, it's a little chemistry, but the key to it is that this TIL is an enzyme that makes a reaction. Normally takes 78 million years to happen, and it occurs in 18 milliseconds. Instead of 78 million years. That's why you need these enzymes. But to get the enzyme, you need the bacteria. The bacteria are so elegantly programmed that they make these complex chemistry that's just stunning. Okay, don't forget, the vast majority of your DNA is located in the nucleus of the cells. It contains the instructions for your entire body. That DNA has to stay the same, and it has a template so that it can be repaired. So the DNA has to be protected very well, and it is, because the ribosomes create the enzymes, and they collect on a place called the rough endoplasmic reticulum. I'm going to show you that right now. All right, I'm going to go really quick through this because I'm going to be doing a big, long discussion with my friend Andy Marino, who is a triple PhD bacterial engineer. He runs a company that they have laboratories that test food coming into the country and big farms and all that stuff, and they have to be sure that that food is good and is not going to die and kill people. So he's deep into this now. He's a bacterial engineer. So what happens in your DNA? Something gets jiggled around. One of these chemicals gets hit with a piece of ionization. Immediately it will return to normal because the enzymes work at the speed of light, literally. They work just as fast as magnetism does. It's the speed of light. And so they will instantly repair that DNA. However, they work on those enzymes, and those enzymes which are these things here, are so elegant that they can do this chemistry spontaneous. But done. Case is closed with the correct enzyme. But the only way you get that enzyme is because it gets squirted out of a bacteria called a ribosome. That ribosome is so small that you can have literally millions of them in one single cell. Here's where the ribosomes, they just float around in here. However, they collect primarily at this spot right here. It's called the rough endoplasmic reticulum. And if you follow that through, it's like a maze to get to the nucleus. Well, what are we talking about the nucleus? That's where your DNA is. All right? This stuff here has literally probably 20 or 30,000 different enzymes attached on here, waiting to be triggered if something wrong came in here, and it would destroy it, or whatever. But the ribosomes are the chemistry sets. Now, they talk about the mitochondria. That also has some protection in it as well, using the ribosomes. Now, well, you know, everywhere is protected. Ribosomes are free floaters. They're everywhere. In the cytoplasm, they're in the blood, they're everywhere. So they do collect inside the cells. You can have millions of them, literally millions of them, inside that cell, and still have all the other stuff that's in there as well. They're so small. But when they pop open, whoo, do they pop open. And here's what happens. They squirt these out in these things here. Now, this is going to make a ball. All right, it's going to make a ball like this, a little tiny one. Ribosome. And that's going to program a DNA strain, of RNA, which cuts into the DNA, and then it affects your DNA. It says, okay, from now on, this certain thing is going to happen because I now have a program built into you. Well, your DNA should say, whoa, 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 whoa. That's not supposed to be in here. Let's go take that out. And it creates an enzyme to go and break in and fix it. You know, a bunch of enzymes. It's a complicated, complex system. It takes millions of years to do some of this chemistry that's done in microseconds. And it just happens because the bacteria initiates the process. You don't have the bacteria, it will not happen. It doesn't matter what you do. You can try to be as healthy as you want to be. If you don't have the enzyme, you are not going to get the protection in the endoplasmic reticulum. And your nucleus, your DNA, is not going to get repaired. Or they send things in here to repair it when it gets damaged. I don't know. It's really in a pretty protected area anyway. You got all these cell membranes around, you got nuclear envelope, nucleoplasm, nucleopores, you know, all that ball is additional to the membrane that's in the cell and then additional to the body. So it's probably not going to get damaged as much as you would think the DNA, like just, it's more protected than this. It's like wearing a helmet, you know, that type of thing. All right, all I care about is getting a database of what's in the gut. Right now they're saying one type of probiotic received a great deal of attention in recent years is soil-based organisms. All right, perhaps no other category of probiotics is more controversial. These are literally things of ancient archaea out of the dirt, basically. All right, so it's very controversial. Yet, instead of an evidence-based approach that considers the diversity and complexity of these organisms, most voices on the subject have firmly taken up one side or the other. And I see that right across the board in science, and they just won't look at something they don't want to see. And this soil-based organism are going to be in your fecal matter, just like everything else that's in you. This, bacteria. And literally 50% approximately of your fecal matter is bacteria. That does everything in your body. It creates the enzymes, it digests the food, it carries out the trash, it breaks down, and it builds up. It does everything. And they are very, very complex, and they are these things right here. And they come from a little tiny ball like that. And they're so small that millions of those tiny balls could fit into one single human cell. And every one of them carries a package like this. It's like a chemistry set. And I mean a very, very exotic chemistry set. All right? In the magnetic world, every one of these is a magnetic moment. It has a signature of like a magnetism around it. And when all that stuff hits something that it knows it doesn't like or wants to break down or whatever it does, the enzyme will done. And then it just continues on. It doesn't break this. This is like an executioner. And as fast as it can hit the substrate, which means the thing that it wants to break, as quick as it can get to it, it does its job. And it's instantaneous, and I mean way instantaneous. Like I said, I think it's thousandths of a second is the same as millions of years of chemistry, but you have to have that enzyme. If you don't have it, it's not going to work. And if you don't have that enzyme, you're not going to be able to fix your DNA. That's my claim at this moment. That's why the DNA is being damaged, and all we need to do, and I say all we need to do, what we do need to do, first of all, is get a database. What's in your bacteria and in your gut and all that stuff prior to your CAT scan, and then after it, see what's different. Is there any difference in the bacteria? You know, or this is where it gets tricky, because we need the database. It all boils down to the database. If we don't have the database, we can't figure anything out, because we're going to see what that person has to begin with. Then they go through the CAT scan. Well, the CAT scan is going to damage a bunch of DNA, just like it's going to be on everybody. But some people are going to have the correct bacteria, and no problem. They fix their DNA, and they go off about their life. Somebody else doesn't have the right bacteria. So we need a database. Do they have the right bacteria when they get the CAT scan? If they don't, we got to put some in them and let them have their CAT scan. Everything will be fine. And the same thing with other diseases. And now I was talking with my friend Andy. We may be able to bring it down and understand it by magnesium. Well, I don't want to get too deep into the chemistry, but COVID and all that stuff was linked with a magnesium ion, and I went back to 2004, and they did link magnesium ions to this issue as well. What bacteria creates that magnesium ion, or what series of enzymes work together to create that magnesium ion? And ion just, well, anyway, I'm going to just hold it off for now. This is very important to understand how we can fix our DNA. Because even the doctors are predicting this. This isn't me. This is from Science Alert, but they say CAT scans predicted to result 100,000 new cancers. You're going in to get treated, and they ended up getting you cancer. More Americans receiving, and they say it's good, you should do it to get, but if there's a low, well, let me put it this way, more and more people, their guts are going bad. People need to get this. And right in the same article, they're talking about scientists hacking bacteria to fight cancer. Right? But I'm telling you, that's a whole other issue. They want to re-engineer bacteria. The bacteria exists already to do the job. They want to create something that they can patent, basically. All right. So anyway, they published this study about low levels of ionization in CAT scans theoretically account for 5% of all new cancer diagnoses. That doesn't seem reasonable to me. I think we need to look at what repairs that damage to the DNA, because we know that the DNA can be repaired, but it requires a set of enzymes. And we know the enzymes come from the bacteria. It doesn't seem like a hard thing to figure out who's got what kind of bacteria. And, you know, in other words, we really have to have a database. And if we find out some people are missing some, you have to figure out somehow which bacteria it was that would account for the magnesium ions. I think that's what we need to do, is look into the magnesium ions. But it's definitely going to be an enzyme. An enzyme breaks something down just like that. And when I talk about magnesium enzymes, I mean magnesium ions, I should show you how isotopes are formed. Because that's how chemistry works. And all that stuff happens millions of years in an instantaneous thing. And it's all by half-lives of all those different molecules. And actually atoms. The atoms, the half, you know, the ice, it's a little complicated. Let me just leave it at that. All right, this is from a very serious study on what makes cells resistant to radiation. Could improve cancer treatments. And they go way back on this. What I'm looking at here is this Michael J. Daly. All right, he looked at samples from bacteria, yeast, human cells, and something else called archaea, which is the cells, a domain of single-celled organisms, archaea, which are soil-based. And he wanted to see how this thing was working. Now, Daly had years ago disproven the long-standing idea that harm of radiation exposure lay in the damage to strands of DNA alone. Okay, so he's saying it's not just alone that they break the DNA and then it's forever damaged. No, it's the DNA and it can't get fixed. Now, he showed, I'm going to read it to you carefully. Now, you look at this carefully. He showed that the problem was not the DNA damage itself, but the inability of the cells to repair the damage. It didn't have the enzymes to repair the damage. The radiation, okay, I believe I was talking, I had just a little technical glitch here now. Daly had also shown in a 2004 study that radiation resistance was associated with the presence in the cell of magnesium ions associated with small organic molecules forming powerful antioxidant complexes. Now, De Ruggiero discovered the same magnesium complexes in archaea and other bacteria. These little nutshell things, the capsules, supporting the idea of a universal mechanism for radiation resistance. The complexes were found to have potent antioxidant properties that supported the proteins in the cell, which in turn bolstered the cell's ability to repair DNA damage. So it basically, at this point, I'm going to be talking with Andy, we're going to go over the whole thing, but it appears that these particular types of bacteria could be possibly the answer. They need to be looked at carefully. And we need a database. And then we need, if people they don't have the right bacteria in their body, and then they get, you know, the radiation from this CAT scan, it's going to hurt them. Now, how could we figure out that? How could we understand if it is damaging the DNA? What the sequence is there? You know, what is that bacteria? How can we isolate that? That's the key. There's a lot of research to be done here. This is not a done deal, but it looks like these soil-based bacteria are one of the keys to the castle here. Now, we got to look at that and see what changes in the gut when you start taking these soil-based bacteria. What new bacteria is introduced into your gut? And what is in a real healthy person's bacteria? And what age is it when it changes? And does it change, do they change universally, or is it you just change because of what you run into in your life and how you lead your life? There's a lot of questions to be answered here, but this, I believe, is really important, especially when Andy said, like I say, he's a bacterial engineer, and he said, they ran into the issue with magnesium related to the COVID. Now, he's deep into this stuff, so when he said that, I said, wow, that's what they're talking about here, magnesium. And this goes back 2004. And he said years ago, disproven the long-standing idea of the radiation exposure damage to strands of DNA alone. All right, it does, but it should be able to be fixed. And that's 20 years ago. All right, I love you all. Andy and I will be doing a discussion on this and trying to, because we've been doing, working 5-6 years now on autism issues, and the same thing with this same kind of bacteria, soil-based bacteria, and it has helped a lot in people with autism. So I think we're on the right track here.